Their silence once drove you crazy. The way they pulled away just as you opened up. The way they seemed indifferent when you needed them the most. You were always the one maintaining the connection, they were just present. If you've ever loved an avoidant, you know the feeling. It wasn't a typical breakup. It was the slow erosion of hope that was never returned. You gave everything. They gave nothing. And when there was nothing left to give, they still let you go. But what you didn't know is this. The entire game flips when you shift. When you stop chasing. When you stop explaining. When you disappear, not to make them miss you, but to remind yourself of your own worth. This video isn't about making them come back. It's a reminder that, when you learn to stay with yourself, you no longer need anyone to stay for you. This is the journey of reversing the dynamic, not through games, but through emotional maturity and self-respect. And if you're here, maybe you're finally ready. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and watch until the end, because you won't just understand the avoidant, you'll meet a stronger version of yourself. You didn't see it clearly at first, but over time, it felt like you were doing all the work in a two-person relationship. You were the one initiating the conversations, patching up the fights, holding the emotional thread that was slowly unraveling. And them? They were there, but not really present. They replied when you messaged, but rarely initiated. They listened when you were sad, but rarely shared anything real from inside. They said, everything's fine as long as there's no pressure. Yet their silence and withdrawal created the greatest pressure of all. The pressure to maintain a one-sided connection. In a relationship with an avoidant, the power lies in the one who withdraws. They keep their distance knowing you'll be the one to close it. They don't have to try, because you do enough for both. They don't need to invest emotionally, because they can see the fear of losing them in your eyes. And that the imbalance of effort slowly wears you down. You feel it's unfair. You feel exhausted. You're constantly anxious. If I stop trying, will this just fall apart? You're heartbroken because the person you love stands behind an invisible wall, refusing to let you in. You lose your balance trying to guess what they're thinking, what they're feeling, or whether they'll leave if you show you need them too much. In a healthy relationship, connection is built by both people. But with an avoidant, you're carrying it alone. And you begin to wonder, am I truly loving them, or am I just trying to convince them I'm worth loving? You've tried everything to change the relationship. You learned how to communicate more clearly, expressing your feelings without blaming, simply sharing your genuine needs. You set boundaries, hoping that healthy limits might help them see and adjust. You practice patience sometimes to the point of hurting yourself to create a safe space where they might let their guard down. You hoped, you waited, you forgave. You told yourself, just a little more time, one more deep conversation, and things would shift. But nothing shifted. Not because you weren't good enough, but because the core power dynamic in the relationship never changed. They still held control. You were still the one trying. They could withdraw at any moment without losing anything. But every time they left, another piece of your heart shattered. And that's when you face a painful truth. It wasn't that you didn't try hard enough. It's that all your effort existed inside a fundamentally imbalanced system, where you were always the one who had more to lose. Transitioning from the previous part, when you're exhausted from trying without seeing change, you're finally faced with a vital question. Will you keep playing a game where the rules only benefit one side? And then, something shifts. Not in the noise of confrontation, but in the quiet realization of truth. You don't have to keep trying. In fact, you shouldn't. This is when you execute the reverse, a radical and empowering flip of the dynamic. Not through anger, not through manipulation, but through a complete, unconditional disengagement. You stop pursuing. You stop trying to understand them. You are no longer the one holding the thread of connection. You disappear, exactly as they once did to you. But this disappearance is different. It's not rooted in hurt, but in clarity. It's not born from bitterness, but from a deep commitment to self-freedom. You stop sending long messages. You stop checking if they're online. You stop searching for signals from them. Instead, you return to yourself, the part of you abandoned in that endless pursuit. And from there, you start seeing the truth. All along, they held the power because you were the one who feared losing. They could go silent, knowing you'd speak. They could be cold, knowing you'd bring warmth. They could withdraw, knowing you'd come closer. But when you stop, the entire structure collapses. The one who controlled distance must now confront real emptiness. No one to bridge the gap, no one to reach out, no one to rescue the connection. And in that silence, they taste the very feeling they once caused you. Abandonment without explanation, silence without connection, being disregarded without anyone trying to fix it. You're not doing this to hurt them. You're doing it to choose yourself, decisively, unapologetically, without hesitation. The reversal isn't a game. It's a liberation ritual, a declaration that I no longer want to chase love from where I always have to betray myself. And when you walk away not to win, but to leave you win everything. The shift in power doesn't come from hurting them, it comes from no longer needing to say anything at all. After all the efforts, all the explanations, the clarifying, the pleading, the emotional transparency, you finally choose what the avoidant has always chosen: silent withdrawal. But unlike them, you're not doing it to protect yourself from connection, you're doing it to liberate yourself from a connection that no longer breathes life into you. And then, in that silence, something remarkable begins to happen. The one who used to retreat now finds themselves in the very void they once pushed you into. A space of uncertainty, no response, and emotional ambiguity. No more messages to read, no more explanations to rely on. No more emotional mirror, only emptiness. For the first time, they taste loss of control. For the first time, they don't know whether you're still there. And the irony is, your silence speaks louder than anything you've ever said. You don't need to scream that you were hurt. You don't need a long letter explaining why you've let go. You have truly let go, and that leaves them unable to react in the ways they always did, by avoiding. The effect of your unexplained disappearance is not revenge. It is personal reclamation, the quiet, dignified place where you stand up without needing an audience and choose silence as your final act of self-respect. And then, as predicted, the avoidant returns. Perhaps it's a casual message, a sudden show of affection, or a promise that they've changed. But this time, you don't feel a rush. No more anticipation, no more rekindled hope, because you've changed. Your indifference is no longer a tactic to make them chase you, but a reflection of true emotional maturity, where you no longer need them to feel whole. If you respond at all, it's with the same calm detachment they once showed you. You may listen, if necessary, but your eyes no longer plead. You don't reject them, but you don't reach for them either, because now you understand, not everyone who returns deserves a place back in your heart. Authentic indifference is when you no longer pretend to be strong because you truly are. It's not coldness, it's peace. Not revenge, but freedom from needing to win. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need them to understand your pain, because you've moved through it and that is enough. Now, your indifference doesn't hurt anyone. It simply states that you have chosen yourself. And if that causes them pain, it's not your fault. It is the consequence of a path they once thought they controlled. There's one thing avoidants are acutely sensitive to. They know when you're pretending to leave but still staying inside. And ironically, this performance of letting go continues to hand power right back to them. You say you've stopped caring, but you're still watching. You don't reach out, but you still hope they'll message. You act fine, but deep down, you're waiting for them to realize and come back. In that case, silence isn't power, it's a strategy. And every strategy reveals itself because energy doesn't lie. The avoidant will sense this, and they'll stay calm, because they know you haven't really left. But when you truly let go, everything shifts. No more waiting, no more needing them to understand, no more checking messages or wondering if you still cross their mind. You're no longer performing. You've returned to your own life deeply and peacefully. Now, you no longer pretend to be indifferent, you genuinely are. No theatrics, no expectations, no need for them to witness your rebirth. You've simply stopped placing them at the center of your emotional universe. And when that happens, the power shifts, quietly. Without announcement, you become the one holding freedom. You exit the game. And what you gain isn't their return, it's your own. Permanent distance is not a punishment. It is the final outcome of a deep realization. They are not compatible with you, not because you're better, not because they're not good enough, simply because they cannot or will not meet the level of connection you rightfully need. This permanent withdrawal is no longer a tactic to make them see your worth. It's not a last attempt to shift them. It is an act of self-love, where you face the truth without deceiving yourself anymore. You're no longer angry. You no longer blame. You're not hoping for change either. Instead, you thank yourself for having the courage to step out of a cycle that made you smaller every day. Permanent distance is a form of freedom. Not the freedom of escaping someone, but the freedom to return to yourself, no longer manipulated by emotion, hope, or memory. You don't need to play a role. You don't need to shape yourself around someone who was never willing to meet you. You didn't choose distance to prove a point. You chose it to protect the inner peace you paid dearly to reclaim. That's when you understand. A love that is real will never ask you to lose yourself just to be loved back. And in that distance, you lose no one. You only find yourself again. And it's exactly when you walk away in silence, with a sense of permanent distance free of bitterness, that you realize you're not just leaving a person, you're coming home to yourself. Healing never starts with changing someone else. It begins the moment you have the courage to end what no longer nourishes you, even if your heart still lingers. You come to see that real love isn't about holding on to someone who can't stay. It's about learning to stay with yourself without feeling alone. At first, it might hurt. Emptiness often echoes what once felt familiar. But soon you'll see, that pain isn't your enemy. It's a silent teacher, guiding you back to the most authentic version of yourself, one who no longer lives to be chosen, but lives knowing they are worthy. You stop needing to be understood. You stop seeking validation. You no longer aim to impress or convince anyone. You begin to live again with a deep sense of inner freedom, where everything you do comes not from a hunger for love, but from the love you've already built within. And the avoidant, if they ever turn back, they won't find you standing in the same place. They'll find a new you, calm, still, not cold, but no longer available. They might feel regret. They might begin to see the worth of what they lost. But now, that doesn't matter. Because your value no longer depends on anyone's recognition, it lives in the way you choose yourself, every single day. As Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. You've chosen to respond by walking away not to punish, but to liberate. You chose silence not to manipulate, but to restore dignity. You chose distance not to hurt, but to end the cycle of being hurt. And in doing so, you didn't just move on from a person. You moved on from the version of yourself who once needed love more than they honored their own self-respect. In the end, this isn't a story about a lost relationship. It's a story about a person who returned to themselves stronger, clearer, and no longer willing to sacrifice who they are for a connection that couldn't hold them.